What's going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to Swoop Luke, a special qualifying final edition. It's been a hot minute since I've made one of these videos. Hopefully I remember how it goes. So let's just open this intro. Fuck me dead. So let's just roll this intro and get straight into it. It was just like a round one game usually is. It was scrappy from both teams. The skills weren't up to it. Our accuracy really cost us in the end. And it was kind of like, you know, the usual Collingwood that it's been throughout this season. We didn't take our chances in the first quarter and we let them run over the top of us in the last quarter. It was a rollercoaster sort of game. We were up at stages, we were down at stages. We were kind of middling through the third quarter and the fourth quarter before Tom Hawkins kicked his 500th goal and they went on to win by 7 points. This was Jamie Elliott's first game back in 18 or so months. He went on, kicked 3 goals, kicked the opener, looked in really good touch. You couldn't really tell that he missed 18 months of football. That's how good he was, that's how much he showed, and he just really grew from there throughout the season. But it was just the Geelong midfield got on top of us. Tim Kelly had a dominant game against us. Over 9 clearances, 600 metres gained and 6 inside 50s, and he just seemed to be where the ball was. I know that sounds dumb because, that's his role, to be where the ball is. But what I mean is, wherever the ball went, he was there, racking up those disposals, lots of contested ball, and he's going to be one to watch this Friday night. Of course, you had the likes of Dangerfield and Ablett doing what they do best, but it was those guys that proved to be a little bit too much for us that game. Alright, so this is a new final segment that I'm calling The Run In, where I talk about not the previous round's game, just how these teams have gone in for the last few weeks. So we'll just jump right into it. Geelong have won 3 of their last 5 games. Their last win came against Carlton in the round 23 game. They lost to Brisbane by a point. They smashed the Kangaroos, lost to Freo, and then beat Sydney. And I guess you can't say that their form has been shithouse because they finished first, But I think that was mainly in part to their start of the season. They only lost 6 games for the season, I think. And they are a good side, don't get me wrong. But I think they peaked a little bit too early and at the wrong time. There's been all this talk about this home final. Chris Scott can't stop talking about it, We should be playing at Cardinia Park or GMHBA Stadium, whatever it's called. And are the players thinking that the coach doesn't have faith that they can go out on the MCG in front of 95,000 people and pull it for win? Does that come into play, in the back of their minds? Do they start doubting themselves? Does that have a factor? I don't really think so, because what's going to happen is, if they do win, Chris Scott will come out and say, oh, we can play anywhere, we can beat anyone. It's like, then why complain about it, But that's, crystal balling into the future. Collingwood, on the other hand, we've won our last 4 on the trot, beating Melbourne, Gold Coast, Adelaide in Adelaide, and a defiant but undermanned Essendon in round 23 to sew up that top 4 spot. Our last loss came against Richmond. We lost by 32 points, I'm pretty sure. And it was just one of those games where we just weren't on song and Richmond just ran over the top of us. I feel like we're finding form at the right possible time. We don't want to peak too early. We don't want to peak in the middle of the season. You want to start gaining momentum, gaining form, up until the first week of finals. And we knew since that Richmond game, we have to win every single game to be premiership contenders. I feel like we're the sleeping giant of this finals competition. There's a lot of question marks about us, but you got to remember that we haven't been playing with DeGoey, Stevenson. Moore's been here and there, for the last 12 weeks. Ben Reed's out. It's just, we're a sleeping giant because we've got these big names coming in, and no one knows how we are when we do hit right form at the right time. Look at the finals last year. We scraped into 3rd spot. We made it to the grand final because we started playing good footy. Buckley today said that this finals is like a new season. The season ended, the week rest, and then we go again. Grundy versus Reece Stanley is one of the matchups that I'll be most excited for and a little bit nervous for, because in round 1, I feel like Stanley did get the better of Grundy, but since then, Grundy has only gotten better. But in that round 1 game, Reece Stanley went wherever Grundy was going. So he was kind of playing like a tagging role on Grundy while also trying to win, the clearances and the ruck tap outs, which they didn't win hit outs, but they did win all the clearances. So that's something that our midfield can tighten up on, making sure that if Grundy does get first use of the ball, we're there to get the clearance, not the Geelong players. And, I wouldn't be surprised if they do play Stanley in a hybrid ruck tagging role on Grundy to just try and nullify Grundy's influence on the game. Talking about influences, Dangerfield's influence on the game. He looms as the player that could win this for the Cats right off his own back. He's smart with the ball, he goes in hard, puts his body on the line, and always finds first use of the ball. We've got to put a lot of work into him, and, I know that putting a lot of work into one player means that all these other players, get free, Tim Kelly or Selwood or Ablett if, he ever gets a run into the middle. But Dangerfield is that player that could make or break this Geelong side. And if we nullify, there's that word again, but if we nullify his influence, we go a long way into winning this game. Maybe that means putting a hard tag on him like Greenwood, or just making him more accountable at stoppages, making sure that someone's there with him and not playing off him like most midfielders tend to do now. In their forward line, Ablett is one of their most dangerous. I know they have Tom Hawkins, Radigalia when he goes up there, but I think Bruzzy or Greenwood, if he's not tagging Dangerfield, will be the one to play on Ablett and just get him rolled up a little bit. Ablett's a bit of a hothead, so if you can roll him up, get into his head early, he might give away a few free kicks and, you just can't get sucked into that stuff. But I think Bruzzy will be a good option on Ablett. Our forward line is going to look even more dynamic than it already does. The inclusions of Stevenson, De Goey, maybe Ben Reid, who knows, will just, oh man, it's just so exciting to think about. But thinking about our forwards, our small forwards or however we line up, there's also the question mark of who goes on to Tom Stewart and makes him accountable. I keep using this word, but Tom Stewart plays that McGovern role for the Cats like McGovern does for the Eagles. He's always there to mop up a long ball in, and he made the All-Australian team. At the moment, Champion Data ranks him as elite in intercept marks, ranked 7th in the competition, and he hasn't lost a one-on-one marking contest all season, which is just crazy when you think about it. So someone has to play on him, kind of like what Main did and kind of like what Mychek did against McGovern. Take him out of the game and they lose that run-off halfback, then they lose that intercept marker. So it's going to be very interesting who goes on to Tom Stewart. So this is the contentious one. I've been asking the question on Instagram a lot. Who comes into the team, and more importantly, who goes out of the team? I don't see us making more than maybe 4 changes. You don't want to change the whole dynamic of the team, but it's just going to be hard to say, you and you are out for this finals game because everyone has played their part in the last 4 or so weeks leading up to finals. So my ins this week would be De Goey, Stevenson, side bottom. Oh man, I want to say Reid, but I don't know if I trust him. And Aish. I think Aish, before injuring his shoulder against GWS, was one of those guys that was a bit of a surprise packet this year. I've got to say I was a bit harsh on him at the start of the year. He really started to prove me wrong, does put his body on the line, and would be good off the halfback. Just need that run and that poise that comes with him. But who goes out? So this is the hard one, isn't it? I think that if Darcy Moore does get picked in the team, you could see Darcy and Roughhead going into the back line. So I think Magin, unfortunately, comes out. If Aish gets picked, I think Noble comes out, but then it leaves the question with De Goey and Stevenson. I don't think they played De Goey 100% into that forward line. I think he does take more of a, not more of a midfield role, but I do think he will play in that midfield. So unfortunately, I think Wills will come out despite a good block of games. And, finals is not only made of heroes, it's made of heartbreak as well. So do you think Wills comes out? And who goes out for Stevenson? By all reports, they reckon it might be Varco, but I love what Varco brings to the table. His forward pressure is second to none. But then who does go out? Like, it's Varco or Josh Thomas, and Josh Thomas has been coming into form at the right time, so it's hard. I think I'm going to have to say Josh Thomas purely for the fact that Varco has been around the traps in finals, won premierships with Geelong. His pressure is immense, and he doesn't get a lot of the ball, but he kicks important goals, and, people are scared when they've got the ball and Varco is hunting them. Alright, so I think that Collingwood do win. I think it will be a very scrappy affair. Apparently it's going to be raining, so that doesn't help for scoring. So I think we're going to win by Man, I don't want it to be too close, but I think we're going to win by 14 points. My big call is that Stevenson's going to kick 5 goals on his, I was going to say debut, but it's not his debut. He's going to kick 5 goals on his return, and he's going to show the competition exactly what Collingwood are made of. Now, this is not a part of my big call, but it is a big call in a sense because I think that we're a better team now than we are at this time last season. When you think about it, the first week of finals last season, Treloar was coming back from 11 weeks off with those 2 hamstring injuries. Pendle's had a back complaint for most of the season, couldn't pick up the ball from the ground according to his reports. Tyson Goldsack was playing his first game after an ACL injury, so he was a little bit underdone. We didn't have Elliott, we didn't have Rufford, we didn't have Moore, we didn't have Shaz, and De Goey was carrying injuries as well that was being well documented. So I think that our personnel is better placed and we're a little bit healthier, you know. I want to say thank you everyone for all your positive feedback to that finals pump up video. It's gotten over 1,000 views, which is amazing. So thank you everyone for sharing it around. Thank you for liking it. I really do appreciate it. Got to try and get a Pendlebury one out before Friday night, so fingers crossed I can do that. Need a lot of caffeine and a lot of late nights. But until then, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll swoop you later. You know, does that come into play into their heads? Do they start doubting this? Does that come? That's period. That's full stop. Why am I trying to say that? So my ins this week would be De Goey,